Hello guys, it's Chris aka Hotdog here from BuffNerfRepeat, and today I'm bringing you my video review of Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which I played through on an Xbox One. As always, there is a full written review of this game live on the website, which is www.buffnerfrepeat.com, but if reading isn't really your thing, then sit back and I'll take you through my thoughts on the game. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is the third installment in the rebooted Tomb Raider franchise, and the final part of what has been dubbed the Origin Trilogy. In this installment, Lara must try and fix her own almighty cock-up when her over-eagerness to raid tombs and take things that frankly don't bloody well belong to her sort of set in motion a chain of events that will ultimately lead to the end of the world. Oops. Thankfully, to fix this balls up, Lara must travel to South America, a setting which proves absolutely perfect for the game to show off its strong graphical prowess. The jungle setting is absolutely beautiful, and the developers know it, giving you plenty of opportunity to take in the scenery and admire the view. The game is heavily populated by wildlife, and that coupled with great sound design and strong lighting effects really help to make this feel like a living, breathing world. Like previous entries in the series, the game isn't quite as open world as it would like you to think. You will follow a mostly linear path, branching off on occasion to pick up one of the series' traditional collectible items, or maybe to check out a crypt or a challenge tomb, which also make a welcome return. One area of the game that is more open are the towns and villages which Lara can explore for the first time in the series. These areas bustle with life and allow Lara to interact with NPCs, buy from merchants, and pick up side quests. Unfortunately, these side quests are largely pointless and uninteresting, and serve only as a distraction from the main story and as an opportunity to pad out some game time. Speaking of the main story, the evil Trinity Corporation make a return from the previous game as the main antagonist, and we also encounter some new enemies along the way. The story itself is confusing, convoluted, and at times, frankly, a bit boring, and definitely serves as the weakest of the trilogy. One noticeable difference here from previous entries in the series is that combat takes a bit of a backseat, as there is a much stronger emphasis on platforming and actual tomb raiding. It's at these points where the game truly excels. Tombs are gorgeous, atmospheric, and creepy as you would expect them to be, particularly later on in the game when things take a bit of a horror turn. As you explore these various tombs, you'll encounter numerous puzzles along the way. These puzzle rooms hit you in daunting fashion and force you to step back and take a minute, considering your surroundings and thinking about what you need to do. All of these puzzles are challenging, enjoyable, and most importantly never repeat themselves, and definitely act as one of the stronger parts of the game. When combat does take centre stage, there is definitely a greater emphasis on stealth, and this is something that has clearly been intended by the developers. Lara at this stage is a vicious, remorseless killing machine, and she takes down enemies in all manner of brutal ways. Stealth takedowns are made easier by a survival instinct system that allows you to see whether your victims are in sight of other enemies or not, and groups of enemy soldiers do tend to break up and walk away isolated, allowing you to take them down undetected. Lara can now cover herself with mud to keep her more concealed when she's hiding up against walls, allowing her to move around areas of the map undetected to get better vantage points to take down enemies without being spotted. Playing the game this way is really enjoyable and satisfying, and you'll find yourself actually wanting to get through areas undetected, silently taking down enemies one at a time. Certainly for the first half of the game at least I barely drew a weapon, relying mainly on stealth takedowns or maybe my bow and arrow in extreme circumstances. It's not until about the halfway point of the game when a new enemy is introduced and it all starts really kicking off, that you need to rely more on your weapons and guns become a bit of a necessity. When things do break down into a gunfight, one of the game's main blemishes starts to show. Gunplay, while solid, does feel slightly sloppy and outdated, and it's particularly difficult to aim at enemies when they get up close to you, meaning that encounters often end with enemies chasing you around the map while you run away trying to quick heal, trying to get enough distance to take them down easily. This is gunplay that hasn't evolved since 2015's Rise of the Tomb Raider, and that's a criticism that can be levelled at a lot of the game's mechanics. The weapons and items that you use are the same ones that you've been using for this whole trilogy, and the collectible system hasn't changed either. You'll still use gathered resources to upgrade your weapons, and there's still a skill point system, albeit this time in the form of a skill tree. I have to admit that none of these upgrades or skills seem to be particularly useful or make any major difference to gameplay, with the possible exception of the one that helps you breathe underwater for longer. Shadow of the Tomb Raider reintroduces a swimming mechanic to the series, and you do run out of breath relatively quickly, so I strongly suggest that you unlock the ability to breathe underwater for longer as soon as possible. These swimming sections belong in the Tomb Raider franchise and are very welcome here, other than the parts that have you hiding in seaweed to avoid piranhas, which kill you in one hit if they spot you. It's safe to say that those parts get a bit tedious after a while, but luckily they aren't overused. Unfortunately, outside of these swimming sections and the town sections, the game hasn't really evolved from the previous entry. And while you can always argue that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I always feel that particularly the third and final entry of a trilogy should try to innovate and evolve a bit more. Even Lara's character, which has gradually evolved throughout the series as she becomes the Tomb Raider, is a bit inconsistent here. One minute she's a bloodthirsty maniac who looks like she wants to kill your entire family, and the next minute she's remorseful and unsure of herself. Lara's family story arc from the previous entries in the series does continue here in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and there's one particularly memorable section where you visit Croft Manor as a childhood Lara that is great. Lara's best friend Jonah returns and plays a more prominent role in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and their relationship is enjoyable to watch. Throughout the game, Lara does befriend other characters who help her along her way, but these characters are unfortunately rather uninspired, and none of them are memorable. Ultimately, Shadow of the Tomb Raider's biggest mistake is simply playing it too safe, and while that doesn't make for a bad game, in fact it makes for a particularly good game, it's completely fair of everyone to expect them to have done a little bit more with it, rather than just reuse old game mechanics in a different setting. And while that setting may well be gorgeous and quite possibly the best I've ever seen, its bland, cliched story and forgettable characters detracts from it. Indeed, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is at its best when it simply lets us do what we signed up for, and that is raid tombs, platform, and solve puzzles. The game's most memorable moments often happen away from the main story, when you're on your own with no enemies, in optional challenge tombs. What this all ultimately means is that Shadow of the Tomb Raider is a slightly disappointing end to this trilogy, largely in part due to its uninteresting story and its reluctance to try anything new. Despite this, I did still enjoy my time with the game, particularly the emphasis on puzzling and stealth combat. It's because of this that I've decided to award the game a score of 7 out of 10, and I would definitely recommend you to buy it, particularly if you're already a fan of this trilogy. The game will still give you a solid 15 hours if you're only interested in the main story, or maybe closer to 25 if you're a bit of a completionist like me, so it's definitely still worth the cost of a purchase. For future entries in the series, I would like to see a more open world for us to explore a bit more freely, as well as some polished gunplay and some new, fresh gameplay mechanics. I do hope they carry on this stronger emphasis on tomb raiding and puzzle solving, because it really is what Tomb Raider is all about. I really hope at some point in the series future we get to see Lara's iconic dual-wielding pistols. I really did think we would see them in this installment, with it being the part of the series where she becomes the Tomb Raider, but we didn't for some reason, so I really hope that they get involved in the series at some point, and I also hope and pray for the day when we finally get to lock a butler in the fridge again. Okay guys, on that note, thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm sure some of you will agree with me, some of you will disagree with me. It's all about opinions at the end of the day, but I do want to know what you all think, so please leave a comment and let me know. I'd like to emphasise I did really enjoy this game and I love this series. I just didn't think that this final instalment did enough as the third and final part of a trilogy. I thought it needed to do more, so that's my opinion. Please let me know what you think, and don't forget that there is a full written review live on the website right now, which is www.BuffNerfRepeat.com, where I go into a bit more detail. There's a comment section there, so please leave your opinion there as well, but always of course try and be constructive and not rude. And thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you next time.